Chopin doesn't send me a bolt, because this, what I'm about to say, is not necessarily in line with what we know about him. We know for sure, since we start studying him in music history, that his music was considered the epitome of music that is asemantic, meaning he didn't need an extra inspiration for his music. His music is pure, doesn't need a visual art or a landscape or a poem to be inspired, as opposed to Liszt or Schumann, where we see La Vallée de Cloche, La Vallée d'Obermann, we see constantly descriptive music. For Chopin, the fact that he never named a piece with a title except for the structure of the piece, Ballade, Scherzo, or Etude, we know that he refused categorically the connection between his music and any other form of art. But we know also that for the 4 ballades, we are in front of a sort of an exception. We know for sure that he had been in contact with 4 poems by his friend Adam Mickiewicz, a contemporary Polish writer that had written 4 ballads called Ballade I Romances. And all 4 ballads casually have some sort of an assonance with the 4 ballads by Chopin. Particularly the third one. The third poem is about the myth of Ondine, which is the water nymph. The water nymph that needs the soul of a human in order to survive. And she tries with her graces to attract and lure a man into her space, the water, in order to steal his soul and continue living. So this ballade, in many moments, reminds me of this poem. And the inspiration, in my opinion, is pretty clear. One of the elements that I think we should underline before you even listen to the piece is the main theme, which is this kind of a call. It's like a lure that she sings in order to attract him. And there is some sort of a ambivalence of the piece between this naive innocence and the ominous darkness, which is her agenda, because she's mean at heart. All she wants to do is to attract him into the water so that she can own his soul. So in many moments, I can see this dialogue between 2 lovers coming up, and for instance, in the beginning. And then the attraction. And for the first time, she sings. And then the second time through, he responds. And then she starts being chased by him. And she runs and he follows her in this area. And she escapes from him. She can never be caught until she gets to the water. And the water becomes really a dark place. And the whole atmosphere changes. We go in a minor key, very watery feelings, and you can tell that the poor shepherd is getting completely lost in space, and he's no longer in his element, and she's twisting and enveloping him into this element, that is her element. And finally, the triumph of Ondine, who finally possesses this poor shepherd. And, it is incredible how many similarities you can see between the poem and the music. And I know this is a very personal interpretation, and I know that could be completely wrong, but it has helped me majorly in understanding the piece or making sense of the piece. So now I'll let you decide if it's actually a possibility.
constantly editing all the time.
Right.
Nothing was ever finished.
Yeah.
You know, as a composer, you have to adjust yourself to that. Is stuff finished?
Well, I wonder how much of it was a reaction of him hearing other people play his music and deciding, well, this is
not going to
more
work.
clear this way, or so on.
Well,
I mean, he's not the only person who did that. Like Berio did it in his sequenzas.
I remember reading one of the letters from George Sand, diary, and she said the process of creation for him was so painful, because he would sit at the piano and he would be rich by this amazing melody or amazing phrase or amazing theme, and then he would just play it the way it reached him. It was, and then he would spend weeks trying to manipulate it and rechange it and rewrite it and breaking pencils and not sleeping at night and pacing the room and crying until after weeks he would come to the conclusion and he finally rewrite it the way he had initially felt it. It was just this process he had to go through in order to come back to the simplicity
and he
of
never
the
learned
original
a damn
version.
thing.
Yeah.
He kept doing it every single time.
Yes.
The same way that Elgar has just a tremendous difficulty and went phew when it was over. I can't imagine that. And yet
That's the way it was. I mean,
Yeah.
she was a witness of that. Behind the door, she would hear him cry and not sleeping for weeks and breaking pencils and slamming the piano because he wouldn't come back the way he had felt it at the first time. And then finally he was kind of able to find
so
it back.
how are we as performers to deal with that? Do we deal with that is the question. Do we deal with all the changes that he makes? Just the opening of this piece. By the way, I like your talk a lot. It really gave me a place to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's more important that be so than there be whether this is true or not. It's
Right.
the narrative is what's concerned.
Yes,
That's my own.
Could be a complete blasphemy that I just brought up, because he was very, very clear about the fact that he didn't want to have this mixture of things. I mean, expiration.
Did he look down on programmatic music?
Oh my, very much, and
Right.
you can tell because he never named any of his composition
Okay.
after anything,
But
right?
it's so funny because a ballade is a song, right?
Yes, but never inspired to a pre-existing thing. Also, mazurkas are songs inspired to the popular music of Poland,
Yeah.
but never a citation, never something that can be referred externally. He was just, he thought that music was a psychological drama, unrelated to any external force. Yeah, he thought it was an independent form of art, as opposed to Schumann or Liszt, Even Schubert. Schubert writes the Traut. Schubert writes names on his pieces, right? Chopin, you can look everywhere. He hardly puts a name on the voice pieces that he wrote, a few of them.
So
What he was dead before they started naming like the raindrop and the winter.
Yeah.
wind,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so, yeah.
It was, if
He
not
would be
him.
horrified. He would be horrified.
Oh, absolutely. He would come and pull your legs in the sleep.